Hi friends, how are we doing?
Oh, there's magic coming. Oh, there's magic coming. Oh, there's magic coming. Where you gonna be tonight? Oh, there's magic coming. Oh, there's magic coming. There's magic coming. Get ready for the rest of your life.
Hello, beautiful humans. How are you feeling today? It is I, Rorie from Sassafras Tarot. I am a tarot reader, singer-songwriter, and all-around personal growth nerd from Long Island, New York, and general witchy human. And I am here today to record episode 56 of SassafrasCast, How the Bleep Do I Protect My Energy? It felt like the right moment. It felt like the right moment for many of us because, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, 2025 is the reason for this podcast. How is everybody doing today? In just a moment, I'm going to get to the podcast, but for right now, for right this moment, I am going to give a shout out to my patrons. Did you know that if you support this podcast financially, you can get a shout out in every episode, get access, get a backstage pass access to all of these recording sessions like this one right now, and get different perks like bonus episodes, card pulls, and more depending on how you sign up. And you can do that for $1 a month or more at patreon.com/Sassafras Tarot. Here we go. Shout out to Amanda Curry, Rachel Miller, Grayson, Periwinkle Twilight, Rebecca Jones, Brittany, Hannah Westlock, Brittany Campbell, Jen McPhail, and Ondine PM. Thank you so much for being a part of this world and supporting this broadcast. Oh, I apologize. The YouTube, I just checked to make sure I was live on YouTube for my for my patrons, and it made the theme song blast.
Hi friends, how are we doing?
Oh my gosh. So if you're in the chat, please feel free to say hi. I'm going to get started by pulling us a card for the Witchy Weather Report. And today we are going to be talking about protection magic. But we're also going to be talking about other ways to protect your energy that are more mundane, because my big thing is you got to do both things. And as you know, that's a big part of how I teach intuition. And if you've ever had me talk to you about how to read tarot for yourself in particular, I'm always talking about how you need to... I'm so sorry to interrupt everybody because I think the live broadcast is working, but it looks like Pro Tools stopped recording, so I'm going to restart it. Hello, hello. Welcome, welcome. Thank you for tuning in. I apologize. This is a live recording session, so sometimes it gets a little wonky. So I am restarting the recording and I'm going to have to edit it. But let me know if you can see and hear me. In fact, let me double check that the audio is coming through. Okay, looks like it is. Okay. I don't know why that happened, but it's all over now. Welcome. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I'm delighted that I'm doing this at 11 a.m. on a Thursday, and I was like, oh, this might be a hard time for people, and actually it seems like people are more able to tune in, so maybe I'll do more weekday morning broadcasts like this. Okay, cool. Here we go. Recording restarted. So thank you so much for being a part of SassafrasCast today. Here comes the Witchy Weather Report, after which we will be talking about different ways to protect your energy, both magical and mundane. And if you know me, you know that I'm a big proponent of doing both things. We can't really have one without the other. And I talk about this often when I'm talking about intuition, how our intuition and our emotions come through on the same channel. And so if we're not tending to our emotional wisdom, then we can't possibly have intuitive wisdom. You know, we can't possibly access our intuition if our emotions are all over the place because we aren't showing up and doing the work. And similarly, with protecting our energy, we have to be willing to do the mundane things to protect our emotional energy in addition to the magical things. Otherwise, even if the magical things are working, it won't feel like they are because our emotional energy will still feel activated. Anyway, I'll get into that in a moment. For right now, I'm going to pull a card for the Witchy Weather Report. This card is for all of us, and it's intended wherever and whenever it reaches you to have some meaning for you in that moment. Whether you are tuned in live for the live recording session on SassafrasCast, or you are listening 5 years later because you discovered my podcast and you're binging episodes, in which case, hello, welcome to the party. In either case, I'm intending that this card have something useful for you right now. If you are in the moment, however, we have a new moon coming up in Gemini, and we're coming off of the energy of a pretty potent full moon in Scorpio, even though I heard it was a micro moon, meaning the moon is a little further away than usual. Nevertheless, a lot of revelations, a lot has been revealed in this month. I'm recording this in May 2025. What I've been seeing and feeling around me is that it's been a month of information. Much has been revealed, both internally to different people in terms of emotional catharsis and epiphanies and new understandings, new processing, as well as externally, news headlines, text coming in from someone you haven't heard from in a million years, a sudden piece of information that isn't new in that it's not brand new that it's happening, but it's new to you in that you just learned it and now it recontextualizes everything in a relationship, in a work situation, and whatever. We're having those kind of revelations this month, and it's been a doozy. And what I invited everyone to do at the beginning of the month was give themselves a 24-hour waiting period before reacting to anything and seeing if they still wanted to react in the same way 24 hours later. And those of us who have been practicing that, I think it's been a little easier on. We're still getting the onslaught of information, but it has not had as much added drama. However, there's been plenty of drama available for free. Anyway, hello, I have a few people tuned in. I'm so glad to see it for the broadcast. And as you know, or I hope you know, if you're tuned in for this recording session, then you can get your thoughts and comments into the broadcast. This is a patron benefit here at SassafrasCast. Patrons get to tune in for the live recording session if they have questions, if they have thoughts about the topic. I generally do include them in the podcast because I think it's worth it to get these different voices in, and it's a wonderful community that has a lot of wisdom to offer. Here's our card for the moment. Our card for right now is the Five of Wands. Did someone say drama? You just said drama, Rorie. So the Five of Wands is about competitiveness. It can be about jealousy. It can be about chatter. Not the friendly, polite kind of chatter. The kind of chatter that can disappear as soon as the correct person walks into the room and suddenly everyone is silent as if they weren't all just talking about a topic 5 minutes ago. The Five of Wands is about that kind of, it can be gossip, it can be fighting, it can be infighting, it can be everybody has an opinion and everyone's so sure that they're right. Even instead of finding the commonality, finding the differences, and in so doing, often looking away from what's really important. You can see if you're watching the video broadcast, which is on youtube.com/Sassafras Tarot, at Sassafras Tarot, @ Sassafras Tarot. I'm holding up this card to the camera for you, and you can see that there are 5 witches gathered around a cauldron. They're doing something together, and literally the cauldron is bubbling over, and there is a small fire that has started. And like, that's the energy of the Five of Wands, is that there can be so much attention on debate and this conversation that feels very heated and seems to need our attention right now, that the important stuff gets missed. Has this ever happened to you in the comments of a Facebook post? Someone is wrong on the internet. Everything must pause. And later you realize, well, that was not actually the helpful perspective in that moment. I could have taken different actions. I could have made different choices. Now, sometimes the Five of Wands sharpens us. Sometimes it emerges as healthy competition that makes us better. because we are challenged and we rise to the challenge. And sometimes even when it is this kind of like malevolent, gossipy, I'm right, no, I'm right type of energy, it still can better us if we choose to look at it as a lesson. If we choose to look at it as, this is a challenge that I can grow through. I can identify, for example, do I need to do I need to wade into this already very uncomfortable conversation with my big opinion? And will that help things? And we can use our discernment to determine the answer. And just in taking that moment to use our discernment, we're doing a mindful pause, allowing us to have a moment to let our intellect catch up with our emotional reactivity. As well as our deeper emotional wisdom, right? Because we have emotions that are passing and fleeting, like, oh my God, that guy said something and I got to say something back. Or, oh my God, this happened and now I have to freeze and do nothing. And when we pause mindfully and take ourselves out of the instant emotional reaction, we can sometimes access deeper emotions. The emotion of like, I don't actually want to have my day derailed, the desire for peace, right? Or perhaps the desire for peace that is so deep that you're willing to derail this day so that you can settle this once and for all, right? Taking a mindful pause, the phrase, you don't have to attend every argument you're invited to, doesn't mean you should be attending 0 arguments and you should shame yourself if you get into heated discussions. It means that you choose. Sometimes it is worth having a heated discussion. Avoiding conflict can be just as unhelpful and toxic in our lives. So we pick and choose at this moment. What conflicts will I enter into, and can I make a decision and a commitment to myself to enter into conflict if I do, mindfully and with a purpose? Perhaps my purpose is to stand up for someone who's not in the room because I think it's worth it. Perhaps my purpose is to stand up for someone who can't speak for themselves, such as right now speaking for the rights and the safety of trans people in our community. And yes, trans people can and do speak for themselves, but often in rooms where there are 0 trans people, there is bigotry and harmful talk happening, and an ally can stand up to that, right? Can I enter into this conflict because I want this to be the last time this conflict happens? Instead of sweeping it under the rug, it's time to deal with it once and for all. Or do I choose not to enter into this conflict because I realize I need to get good with myself rather than have an argument with someone else? Their perspective on my life is not as important, right? The point is choosing. You will be invited to drama. The point is choosing how, when, and if to participate. Let's dive into our topic, which is about protecting your energy. This is part of my How the BLEEP series, which I've picked up in part, honestly, because I did an episode quite a while ago, like maybe 2 years ago, called How the BLEEP Do I Work with Crystals, inspired by my friend Melissa, who basically posed that question to me when I was saying, I'm trying to think of what to cover in the next podcast episode. And she was like, tell me how the BLEEP to work with crystals. And I was like, that's the title now. And what's interesting is that particular episode, for whatever reason, has been one of my most popular ones. It's gotten a lot of downloads and listens since. I don't know if it's the phrasing or if it's just that people really want to know how to work with crystals, but I was like, well, this is a fun approach. I find it to be a fun approach to let's just take a topic, a different kind of witchy or magical or psycho-spiritual topic, and just unpack it from the bottom up, kind of like those books, which I think are still around, like the Complete Idiot's Guide to Marketing, or, like Such and Such for Dummies, those kind of books, which I've actually read several of, and I find them incredibly helpful, because it's like going into a topic with no assumptions about who knows what and no ego about having to already know what to do, right? So let's talk about this. One of the topics we will be talking about is protection magic. We'll be talking about banishing and clearing rituals and the pros and cons of that. And we will be talking about as well the pros and cons of protective and shielding magic. And I also want to spend a little bit of time talking about how we can emotionally protect our energy. Now, some of these will go hand in hand. In some cases, the act of doing a protection ritual also emotionally makes us feel safer. And it kind of helps you whether the problem is emotional or quote unquote real. I don't mean to say this to diminish anyone's experience. I know that there have been times in my life where I felt like I'm getting a lot of bad luck, or I feel like I just have this yucky energy around me. And the truth is, in my experience, it's more likely to be my own emotional reaction to difficult situations in my life than like somebody sending bad, mean energy rays to me. And I know there's a lot of talk in witchy circles about this type of malevolent energy sending. Somebody's hexed you, somebody's put somebody's attached something to you, somebody is giving you the evil eye. Now, the evil eye is a little different because in folklore, the understanding of the evil eye is that you can do it accidentally, and it's an analog for emotional experiences where you can accidentally give someone the evil eye by looking on them with jealousy or looking on them with resentment, and without even meaning to necessarily send that people that energy, right? It's your feelings. You're like, I have feelings about this other person, right? And even if you're good at tidying your feelings and are like, I have feelings about this other person, but I won't make it their problem, right? I'm not going to go confront them. I recognize that my jealousy is about me, not them, right? For example, the folkloric understanding of the evil eye is that you can still accidentally send that negative energy to them, right? And so when you see those evil eye amulets, with kind of like the big blinking eye that looks at you, those are meant to like mirror any negative energy back, whether it's intentional or not intentional. But I noticed that there is a subset, and I would like to address this. There's a subset of kind of like the spiritual community that earnestly seems to believe that psychic attack is a thing that happens all the time that you must be very vigilant about. And it feels a little unrealistic, in part because literal attack is statistically something that happens probably more than we should be comfortable with, and we should all be careful and, lock our doors and mind our safety. But also, the number of times that I have felt physically threatened by someone is way fewer than the number of moments that I have felt completely safe, right? So yes, there are times when somebody can go after us, and it's good to be on guard always, because we don't know which of those times are which, right? But if you think about, and obviously there are people who have had very different experiences. There are demographics who are more targeted than other demographics, right? For things like physical harm and violence. There are people who are in abusive relationships. So this is not to discount anyone's experience. But in general, if I go out and I like run errands and I go grocery shopping and I, or go to work if I have that type of a job and do different things throughout the day and come home, I'm not walking into any given day expecting someone to attack me or rob me, right? Now, I do have the conscientiousness that I'm thoughtful, right? I still cover up my debit card code when I punch it in at the grocery store. I still, if I'm walking, especially, like in an unfamiliar place, especially at night, I'm still mindful of my surroundings. And those are, times when people do get more nervous, and more can happen if it's isolated and dark. So yes, I do the things, right, to protect myself. But 9 times out of 10, I'm fine, right? And 9 times out of 10, protection is something that we do in very mundane ways, like locking our door, like being aware of our surroundings, like walking someone to their car, like using the buddy system. 9 times out of 10, that's something we do out of an abundance of caution. And it's great to have an abundance of caution. And there's a difference between an abundance of caution and making wise choices and paranoia. And I do see a fair amount of paranoia in the spiritual community about psychic attack. And I think we have all seen individuals who seem to think every 10 minutes that someone is attacking something, someone has, sent energy to them, someone has hexed them, whatever. And unfortunately, there is a dark subset of the community who does what I do. I do tarot readings for people. There are people who do psycho-spiritual services for other people as work. And there is, unfortunately, a dark subset who will prey on those fears. There are the people who will say there's a hex or a curse put on you, and if you pay me this much, I'll remove it. Right? And that is really, that's really a dark thing to say. when people come to people in our community, when people come seeking psycho-spiritual services, it's there's a power differential. They're seeking someone with either more wisdom or more of a connection, whatever their different beliefs are, to help them with a problem they don't feel able to help with themselves. Whether it is something really straightforward, like help me make an amulet so I can get a good job, or give me a tarot reading because I don't know what to do about this situationship, or something else. But there's a power differential. You're going to that person because you perceive them to be an expert on these matters. And when someone says, there's a hex on you, pay me and I'll remove it, that's an abuse of that power. And that isn't to say that that isn't to say that I don't think anyone ever has been the recipient of like bad energy in that way. That isn't to say that I don't think anyone ever on purpose tries to send bad energy to somebody. I do think that can happen. And I think that just like my house, like I don't have thieves trying to break into my house every night. I do lock the door every night, but I don't have thieves trying to break in every night, right? And similarly, although I do practice protective magic every day, I don't think that I'm experiencing psychic attacks every day. And I think that if you have a fear that this is such a dangerous experience, like, oh, like the spirits are going to get me, portals are really dangerous, anything could come in, anything, whatever. Yes, just as we don't leave our door wide open all afternoon, right? Like, just as we like lock our doors and mindfully, guard ourselves and our possessions, yeah, we can be mindful on a psycho-spiritual level of our energy. And also, there is a point at which it becomes paranoia and becomes unhelpful. And that brings me back around to this topic of needing to take care of our emotional energy. We can't protect our energy, and I'm using this term very broadly. I'm using it to talk about protecting against things like psychic attacks. I'm using it to protect against things like the phrase emotional vampirism is like a big buzzword. And that is another thing, like the folkloric interpretation of the evil eye, that I think often happens unintentionally. I think we've all been around someone that makes us feel very drained afterwards. And I think we've all had the experience of knowing they're not even doing it on purpose. And some people I think do. Although I strongly suspect, the more and more I think on this topic and the more experience I gain around this topic, I strongly suspect that most people who are manipulative and harmful have a narrative that does not paint them as the aggressor, have a narrative that paints them as simply defending themselves, even if their actions are in fact very harmful. And we're seeing this play out we often see this play out actually on a national and political stage, where people take very aggressive action but want to invent some kind of a straw man to say, it's not me, I'm defending family values. I am not fighting against trans people in the bathroom. I'm protecting women. We hear people say things like that to restructure a narrative so that they are the victim, or perhaps the white knight, bold protector at the center of the narrative, and whatever harmful actions they may take are excused because it's about defense. Now, sometimes self-defense is very real, right? Someone tries to grab you on the subway. It's appropriate to like do whatever you can to get out of their grasp, right? Then all bets are off. I'm gonna break your nose, right? I'm a New Yorker. I'm not gonna mess around. However, sorry. If you're watching the live broadcast right now, my headphones just fell down and I'm trying to fix it. However, we also have all been in a situation where we felt a little over defensive because we were raw about something and felt like maybe someone was attacking us or saying something really harmful to us, and felt like our backs were up, and later realized, oh, they didn't actually mean any harm. Like I was just, I was willing to jump to that conclusion because I'm feeling so raw about this situation, for example, Two things can be true, but I think it's important when protecting our emotional energy to be aware of this narrative that most people who try to harm us will not even be aware they're trying to harm us. Most people will be framing it as, I'm protecting myself or protecting something else I care about. even if that's not true, right? We do see people carry out harmful actions. And again, we see it play out on a national and international stage in the name of protecting against some type of boogeyman, right? And for them, that's real. And, you know, I think we can speculate about whether there are people who deliberately exploit those types of fears. I think there are. I just talked about, you know, the type of psychic advisor who might exploit your fear that someone is psychically attacking you just to get money. I think those people exist. And I think they probably have a narrative about it too. I think they're like, well, I just got to do what I got to do to get by in this world, right? All that being said, I don't look at protection magic as some kind of battle against good and evil. I don't think that there are evil spirits constantly vying for our attention or vying for something else or vying to take something from us. I do think that there is danger in the world, both from very real physical people and, you know, perhaps spiritually as well. And I think that we have to understand that we're not necessarily fighting some epic battle against good and evil. We're just using good sense to protect ourselves and protect our energy. Right? That being said, let's talk about the emotional side of it. Let's talk about walking that line. What does it look like to have the good sense to protect ourselves, doing the things like letting a buddy know when you're going on a first date, right? Letting your friends know, I'm going to be on a first date with this person. I'm meeting them here and I expect to be done here and I'll check in with you here, right? Because we don't know. Because unfortunately, this is the reality of dating, you know, in particular for people who aren't straight men. This is the reality of dating, that you don't know if you're meeting a stranger for the first time or someone you know just a little bit, you know, whether they are in fact as nice as they seem to be. And so it's wise to text a friend and let them know where you'll be, right? And to do things like planning and meeting in a public place. And that's not a reflection of necessarily believing that this person is going to do harm upon you. It's not about them. It's about you having good sense, right? Because hashtag not all men, right? Not all men are going to rape you or assault you or harm you, but there is a subset who will. And so having the good sense to say, I don't know which one you are, so I'll take basic protective measures. That's good sense, right? Now, if every single time you go to the grocery store, you're concerned that someone's going to kidnap you, unless you have indeed been subject to human trafficking and you do have people after you, because that does exist. That is real. But a general person, I have never experienced any of those things, right? If every time I go out the door, I'm like on such high alert that I'm in like a fight or flight mode because I'm afraid that there are, you know, enemies lurking everywhere I go, that becomes something that interferes with my daily life. And I need to do some emotional management as well as the practical management. And some may be both, right? There are times when taking a few extra precautions makes you feel safer even if you don't need to, right? There are times when you're like, I don't think I need to worry about driving through this neighborhood, but it doesn't hurt anyone if I just lock my doors, right? And I feel a little better, right? For example. But there are times when we have to ask ourselves whether part of the fear is our emotional state and what is bringing it forward, and doing a little bit of emotional interrogation. What is it that's making me so paranoid? Is it because I have something else in my life? Is it trauma? Is it something real that happened to me or happened to someone I care about and I watched it play out that I'm afraid of, which is completely understandable and should trigger you to do some emotional care, right? If it's trauma, maybe we actually get some trauma treatment. Maybe we get therapy, right? If it's something where, you know, we are paranoid all of the time, we need to ask ourselves, why are we feeling this way? Am I at a time in my life where there's a great deal of stress? Is it possible that there is, you know, a mental health option that would help me come from paranoia to reality, right? Is there a middle road to be walked here? And that can be very difficult to walk when you're in it. And that's why it's good to be in the habit of asking ourselves regularly, what's the emotional reaction I'm having in the moment? This may seem like it's far afield from protection magic, but it's really not. Checking in regularly throughout the day, what emotional state I am in, can allow us to make better decisions. If I know I'm anxious, I have a habit of doing this in the car. If I know I'm anxious, even if, whether or not I know why, or whether or not I like know what to do about it or whatever, if I'm driving to a gig and I notice that I'm in an anxious state, maybe I am nervous about whoever I have to meet and impress at the gig. Maybe I'm anxious because I just had an argument with someone and it's unrelated to the place I'm going now, but it's affecting it. Maybe I'm anxious because I, just didn't get enough sleep and woke up out of sorts that day, right? But if I know I'm walking into a situation with anxiety, it frees me to have the awareness to say my emotional state, independent of whatever room I walk into, is an anxious one right now. First of all, I don't necessarily have to put that on other people and make it their problem, though I can reach out for support, right? It allows me to make some new choices. It allows me to realize I am anxious. So somebody who comes over to me and is like, here's where you're playing, here's what you're doing, blah, 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 and is genuinely trying to help me, I might misinterpret it as them not trusting me to do a good job because of my anxiety, right? So it allows me to level set some social interactions that may occur and have a more realistic understanding to be able to look with clear eyes at other people's intentions. And it also allows me to level set what my actions will be. Well, I'm feeling anxious. I'm already anxious, so I don't have to, for example, do things that might make me feel more anxious. I can do things that are more in my comfort zone since I'm already out of it, and this is an act of self-care, right? I'm already anxious. If I'm anxious because, for example, I'm getting a medical procedure, I'm getting a shot, or I'm getting blood drawn or an IV put in, I can choose to ask for support around my anxiety. And this is something I've done in a health setting when I realize I'm really nervous. I don't want to make it everybody else's problem. These nurses are just at work or whatever, but I know that it's more helpful for me and to them to say, hey, I just want to let you know I get a little bit nervous about medical procedures, and it would help me if you could talk through what you're doing, right? Or whatever helps, And for me, that's been a helpful way of managing that anxiety, is bringing it into the room and doing something about it instead of letting myself just like shake in my boots and stew. And protecting our emotional energy that way in small ways throughout the day also protects us from the big feelings that we're afraid of, the reasons we turn to protection magic. Because sometimes it's a buildup. It's a buildup of our emotions. And so when we're doing that emotional work, we both can care for ourselves appropriately, and we can identify when something is truly a concern versus when we might just be in a space that we feel concerned about everything right now. If we just if we just read a big article about a human trafficking ring, we might be a little nervous walking in the parking lot to the grocery store and, a little more nervous than usual. And it might be that we say, well, I am nervous about this, so why don't I think about what basic precautions I could take? I can park in a well-lit area. I can let someone know where I'm going if I'm out after dark. I can, it can become a springboard for us to have some healthy protective measures, right? And also we can acknowledge in ourselves, okay, every shadow I see isn't someone who's about to jump out and get me, right? We can acknowledge to ourselves, maybe, we can be self-aware enough, right, to kind of talk ourselves through some of our difficult emotions. So that's our first step, is managing our emotions. All of the magic or psychospiritual tasks that we do will work better if we're doing that. Now, let's talk about different methods of protection magic, because this is a topic that every single person wants protection from someone. Because everyone has fear, right? And some of those fears are very founded and are grounded in reality. And some of those fears are just fears because we get nervous, right? And it's, that's the human experience. Everybody wants to feel safe. And so we turn to protection magic when we have fears about things in our lives that might happen that make us feel unsafe, whether it's feeling safe from other people. That's a big one for me. Feeling safe from what other people may do, right? Whether it's feeling safe from accidents, right? From things that are just that that on a insurance form would be described as an act of God, right? Feeling safe from a tree branch fallen into your house, feeling safe from whatever. And the truth is, we can't 100% protect ourselves from anything. Some things just happen. Sometimes a tree branch just does fall down in a storm, right? And you can't control it, but you can influence it, right? You can say, well, if I have a tree that is unhealthy and that branch is really looking bad, like it's brittle because it's dead or something happened to it, you can, appropriately call a tree trimmer before it falls on your house, for example, right? And again, that's part of the emotional management, is being able to look at a situation with clear eyes and say, I can't prevent anything, right? I'm not going to cut down every tree around my house. That's not a healthy response, but I can be mindful, right, of things that, before they turn into a problem. And that's what protection measures are about in general. And that's what protection magic is about. It's about allowing us to do enough to let ourselves feel a little safer and move forward in confidence, right? There's a couple kinds. I'm going to walk you through some visualization later, so I'm going to leave it till later, but that's going to be in Which You Got This. I'm going to walk you through visualizing a protective energy bubble around you. A lot of people do banishing or clearing rituals for protection magic. A lot of people invoke guides, ancestors, gods, goddesses, spirits as protectors. Many people also use something like a physical object to kind of power protective magic. Something like, in fact, I have one right here. Oh, this is a little protection spell jar that a friend made for me. And, like a spell jar, an amulet, a crystal a lot of people carry around, like black tourmaline or something like that. And all of these types of protection magic are basically to do the same thing, which is to get the energy around you safe and clear and keep it that way. That's the vibe. We can think of it a little bit. I think of protection magic like a little bit like protecting yourself from infectious diseases, right? We wash our hands frequently so that we don't have germs on them when we eat our food or touch our face or whatever and then get sick, right? We wash our hands frequently to avoid that. And if we know that we're going into a room where people are sick, we might choose to put a face mask on. Or we might choose to, like if we're, like when someone's coughing near you and you hold your breath, I don't know how much that really helps, but I definitely do it sometimes. If I know someone has a cold, I might be like, hey, I'm not going to hug you, but I send you my love from afar, but I don't want to catch your cold, right? It's about keeping our energy clear. We're already doing that by cleaning ourselves, by washing our hands, by doing that stuff, by perhaps keeping our immune system strong. And keeping it that way by putting a barrier between us and what might threaten it, right? So let's talk about first that clearing energy. People do banishing rituals. There are people who do, in particular, I hear about the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, which you can look up. I'm not going to go through it. It's not something I do regularly in my practice. So A, I'd probably butcher it, and B, it's very Googleable. There are people who do this every day, and that's a form of protection magic for them. And it's basically like anything that may have like come in at me, I'm banishing it. And I would liken that to, like, for example, taking a shower, right? You've been out all day. Maybe you walked through some poison ivy. Maybe you picked up an insect on your clothes. Maybe you touched someone and shook their hand and they actually have the flu, right? And you go and take a shower and you wash it all off you and you put your clothes in the laundry, right? And you're, cleansed, right? And then you don't have to worry as much about those things. You've taken care of them. And so banishing rituals or clearing rituals such as smoke cleansing, which is a common one that I see, are ways that people do that. People talk about smoke cleansing. I will not discuss smudging because it's not in my lane. That is a protected practice. That is a Native American practice that's not for me as a person of white European descent. However, smoke cleansing an area with smoke, is something that is common to a lot of different cultures. And there's 1,000,001 ways to do cleansing magic, we don't have to appropriate a ritual that is from a practice that is not our practice, particularly as white people. And like with the history of our two lineages, we don't need to encroach on that. We can, yes. Thank you for bringing that up, Patty Bell. Patty Bell says I use bells for clearing energy. And yes, we can do sound cleansing, right? One of the ways I like to cleanse a space is with sound, as well as like something, whether it's something like, you know, burning protective herbs, or whether it's something like burning a protective candle, or even just kind of like invoking the energy and kind of like walking it out, like asking the elements, earth, fire, air, water, or spirit to put protective energy to escort anything unhelpful out. And I love using sound magic. And many people use bells. There's other, I can imagine too that things like singing bowls and stuff like that, you know, could be used to purify an area. I love to just like put music on loud. That's like music that I associate with me and my energy and safety, right? I am a musician, I'm a singer-songwriter, but I'm not talking about blasting my own music. Although I could do a protection ritual walking through, you know, my house or whatever, like singing and playing guitar. Like I could do that kind of a protection ritual, which is interesting to me. And I like the idea of it. But I'm talking about like putting on my favorite album, you know, like, and especially loud. And it kind of signals like, it's like claiming your turf, right? It's like, this is my energy. My energy is here. If you're not going to affect and interfere with my energy, you know, like if you're negative, like get the hell out, right? And this brings me to a pros and cons thing. When we do banishing rituals, when we do clearing rituals, right? Of course, we do want to clear out anything negative, and we don't want to clear out anything helpful, right? And you know, like we want to banish if we're nervous about, if we want to cleanse a new magical tool, you know, that we brought in, if we want to just make sure that there's, you know, no stray energy in our house, or even cleanse the air after a fight, right? Just cleanse out like the negative vibes, right? We want to maybe banish that energy and get it out, but we don't want to banish like grandma's spirit, for example, right? Like, and I say this like, because literally I have a painting of my grandmother that I associate very strongly with her, and my whole family does, and looks at it as like an extension of her. You know, like, I don't want to banish grandma, right? I want her energy, right? So we have to be mindful. And we have to be mindful in our practices. What are we banishing? When we choose to banish all negative energy, what does that mean? And is it helpful? Sidebar, if we're banishing negative energy from ourselves, and I see this a lot in spiritual bypassing, I see this also where people talk about it's ego. I see ego as the problem. And just the other day, I was having a conversation with somebody who said they think that I don't remember the details, which is good because it means that I can't like divulge anything about their identity accidentally. But they said, I think my problem is ego. You know, I think that I think my ego is making these decisions for me because I'm afraid that this, that, or the other thing is going to happen. And as a result, I don't put myself out there. And I was like, that doesn't sound like your ego. From a psychological perspective, the ego is a word that means something. And many people in psycho-spiritual circles have simply redefined it to be anything we don't like from our psychology. And they have broadly and inaccurately painted the ego as something that deals only in fear. So anything they associate with fear, they're like, it's my ego getting in the way. But choosing not to put yourself out there is usually not your ego. It's a little bit of a lack of ego. The ego is the I am part of you, right? We can associate the positive aspects of the ego with like our solar plexus chakra, with colors like yellow and orange and red. The ego is like, it's me, it's my energy, like me blasting my favorite album in the house, right? Is like, this is my space, right? And the ego will have you put yourself out there in a powerful way. The ego is not going to have you go like, oh, I'm afraid that people won't like me, so I won't put myself out there. That's not ego, it's something else. Now, a little bit, that was some disambiguation, and I have a little bit of a pet peeve about people demonizing the ego. However, to get myself, to bring myself back around, Point being, there is a healthy side to our ego. We don't want to banish our ego. I have a friend who used to tell me, I want to let go of my ego. That's what I let go of in a releasing ritual. And I'm like, your ego is what protects you and says, I deserve not to be abused. Your ego is the thing that stands up on the subway and says, no, actually, you can't grab my ass, random stranger. Your ego is that protector, right? And yes, we've just talked about how we can take protective energy too far and it becomes harmful when we begin lashing out at people who don't deserve it, for example, right? So yes, there's a good and a bad side to that side of that assertion of ourselves. But no, we don't want to banish the whole ego. If we banish our whole ego, then we have no self. We have no self-righteousness, which is sometimes necessary. It's necessary for a healthy revolution. It's necessary to resist political oppression. It's necessary to defend ourselves against attack. So we don't want to banish all things that could ever be negative, because many of those things can be positive, right? And I'll bring this back around to I don't know why I'm using these medical analogs today, but it's useful to me. I'll bring it back around to a medical perspective, right? When we take antibiotics, often they recommend that you also take some probiotics, because when you just put an antibiotic in your body, which sometimes you need to if your body can't on its own fight off an invading germ, right? If a doctor prescribes you antibiotics and you take them, you can also kill the good bacteria that helps our gut. For those of us with vaginas, the stuff that makes it so you don't get a yeast infection, right? And so when you take antibiotics, it's a good idea to also take some probiotics, to also do some things to mitigate that. It's not actually healthy to routinely banish everything, in other words, unless you're also inviting some things back in. So if you're doing cleansing, if you're doing a banishing ritual, I recommend following it up with an invitation ritual where we invite in warm energy, where we invite grandma in, where we invite in protective energy, where we invite in emotional healing, where we invite in whatever energy we do want in our lives. Just as if we take an antibiotic, we're going to have some friggin' yogurt so that, we give those good gut bacteria a chance, right? Bells and Reiki are a powerful combo. Leave a window open for energy to leave. Yes, love that. I'm reading some comments from the chat right now. And Hannah Westlock saying, always blast my tunes in a new house while I'm doing the big clean before moving in. Yeah, that's it's a form of protection magic, and it's a form of yep, this is me. It's connection magic, right? It's staking our claim, staking our connection. Some of the other ways that people use protection magic is by specifically charging something or putting kind of our faith in something to protect us. Crystals, amulets. I just showed you my little, again, if you're watching this, if you're not watching this, if you're just listening, there is a video version. You can see it. I showed you this little spell jar. It's just a protective spell that a dear friend made for me. I happen to love the idea of protective magic from a friend or from a family member, making things for each other, because often, let's be real, aren't we a little more protective sometimes of our loved ones than of ourselves, right? Don't we sometimes have a little bit do as I say, not as I do, right? Aren't we the ones who are like, text me when you get home, let me know you're okay, right? Or, hey, have you eaten yet today? And also we're also the same ones who maybe haven't eaten yet today, right? So I love the idea of protection magic that we make for each other. My friend making a spell jar for me feels actually a little better than me making myself the same spell jar when it comes to protection magic, because I honestly think she might look out for me a little better than I do. In the areas where we might be a little more half-assed with ourselves, we're going to be a lot more careful with our friends and loved ones. In my experience, that's me. Your mileage may vary. There are also things that are just thought to have protective properties. Carrying a black stone is very common. Tourmaline's a common one. Hematite is a black stone, but it's less common. But I have specifically had hematite be a protective amulet for me, and literally, in my personal opinion, unverified personal gnosis. But I do feel that I had a hematite that was on me that I just had as protection that literally helped me. And I think I've shared this story once or twice before on the podcast, but I used to, I was wearing a denim jacket, so it must have been it was fall. I was performing, And I used to carry around a piece of hematite with me just to kind of like, just generally like, hey, protect me, look out for me. You know, I'm a musician. I am every night in a new place, where I may or may not know anybody, you know, like I am doing those things that many of us avoid for protection. I'm in a new bar where I don't know anybody, right? I'm at a party in someone's house performing, and that's what was happening in this story. I was playing at an Oktoberfest party. And so I'm wearing the denim jacket. It's October. It's right. It's that energy. It's that weather. And I've put this hematite in just to be like, hey, keep me safe, you know. And there was this guy who was very enthusiastic throughout my performance, like a little too enthusiastic, right? Like it was a little creepy. It was like he was laying it on. I could tell he was interested in me. I was not interested in him. I was married at the time, and also, even if I wasn't married, I don't owe it to every strange man to be interested in him, right? It wasn't mutual, and even if it had been, the way he was acting was a little much for me. It was stressful, right? It was too much attention. And I could tell that he was someone that I didn't want to be alone in a room with, for example, right? And I'm at this party and I know exactly 0 people, you know, like the host booked me online, you know, and so I'm performing, and at the end of the party, I need to start packing up my car. And of course, this guy is in my face. Let me help you. Let me help you. Let me help you carry all that. That looks so heavy. You shouldn't have to carry it alone, right? And unfortunately, I don't know anyone at the party, but he does. He's friends with everybody, right? And so, whereas if that happened in a bar or like a restaurant or brewery where I was playing, usually I've already made it a relationship with some of the bartenders or staff or whatever to be like, look out for me, you know? And often like women will just do this for each other. It's always women who look out for each other, by the way. It's rarely men, and I wish that weren't the case. But, you know, so there was no one whose eye I could catch to kind of be like, hey, you know, do you see this? And I did politely say, no, thank you. I don't want any help. I prefer to carry it myself. I prefer to pack my car my way. There's a special way that I pack it, you know, and without, you know, he just picks up my speaker and starts walking. So it's like, now what choice do I have, right? Like now it's like, okay, that is what it is. What am I going to fight him for it, you know? And we're walking through the party to get to my car, and everyone is cheering the guy. They're like, oh yeah, Joe, what a gentleman, right? And I know that he does not have gentlemanly intentions, because I've read the room on this guy. And sure enough, I get to my car and he, you know, starts, you know, trying to shove my speaker in wrong, of course. And as soon as he has put the speaker down and then I have fixed where it goes, he gets in my face and he like leans in and he like tries to kiss me. And I was not looking at him when he did it. Like I was on guard already. I had the protection of like good sense protection, right? I was on guard because I didn't trust this person. But at the moment, I was like leaned over to put something in my car, and so it was in such a way that I was turned away from him, putting something in my car, and would then have to come out of my car. And he had arranged it so that when I came out of my car to face him, his face was right there. And something in me sensed it. And I swear to you, it was right over the place where the hematite was. Like it was kind of over my heart. And I just like had this feeling of like, oh, I have to be protective right now of my face. And he was right there and I face palmed him. And I like, is it the hematite? Is it just my awareness? I think it was a combination of both, you know, whatever your mileage may vary. I still am like, thank you. I said thank you to that hematite all the way home. You know, I face shoved him. And luckily that was the end of that. Luckily that was enough, you know, that he was like trying to get something physical from me. And I face shoved him and he was like, I was just going to give you a little kiss. And I was like, actually, no, you weren't. And unfortunately, grossly, what did it for him was me saying, I'm a married woman and that's not okay. It wasn't okay anyway. No woman owes you a kiss regardless of their marital status. But he was like, oh, I can respect that, which was disgusting. It's like, oh, you can respect another man's claim on me, but you can't respect my own bodily autonomy. You're a horrible person. However, I did get like, ultimately, I came through that situation, which could have been much worse, safe. And I feel like the hematite didn't hurt. And that's how I feel about a lot of protective magic. Like, who knows what's exactly doing it, but it can't hurt, right? So black crystals, amulets. Another thing I love is charging a protective guard for yourself. I have a lot of dinosaurs. People give me plastic dinosaurs all the time. It's just a thing. I like dinosaurs are part of my brand as a musician. In fact, here's one. Some friends of mine gave me this dinosaur taco holder as a gift at a gig one day. So I have a lot of like toy dinosaurs, more than the average 40-year-old for sure. And toy dinosaurs are pretty fierce looking, and I have charged several of them as protectors. I love doing that. I love being like, guess what? You're a protector now, and like deliberately making the fierce looking thing be an amulet, be a protector. And a step further might be creating a protective sigil or even a protective servitor. Another topic I won't get super deep into, but you can look it up. Sigils and servitors you see commonly in chaos magic circles, and it's the idea of literally kind of creating a spiritual entity to kind of do what you want, protect you, whatever, bring you something. Now, I have mixed feelings about that because it feels a little colonize-y to me. It feels like, am I bringing something into being just to be my servant? That's not, nope. I don't feel very comfortable with that. However, your mileage may vary. People may feel differently about that. Or on the other side of it, you may make an arrangement with a spirit, an entity, a god, a goddess, a guardian angel, whatever, an ancestor to protect you. And that's not like, you're not like being the master of that. You're just like, hey, will you please protect me, right? You're asking. And I suppose that if you are someone who does the servitor thing, which again, you can look up information about that word, and like kind of like what it means and decide for yourself how you feel about it. I don't think it has to be immoral. You could say, I would like for you to help me with this, right? You could say, I would like for you to help me with this, and as a thank you, I'm offering you this offering, right? Rather than like, I've created you and binding you to my will. That's a little like, ooh, let's not go there. We love consent. Right? And you can do this with protective guardians or protective spirits. And I think that there are, there's a school of thought that there's many different kinds of spirits, including ones that are a little fierce, and you kind of do want someone fierce protecting you, just as you want someone kind of fierce as like a security guard at the club, right? Someone who like people are going to think twice before crossing, right? So there's relational protection as well, right? Where you ask a spirit or entity or ancestor or guardian angel or what have you, or guide or goddess or god to lend you their protection, right? And any of the above or all of the above are great at different times, I think. I'm going to move us into Which You Got This because I am going to talk about visualization. Visualized protection ritual is my most common type. And I'm even the word visualization, I'm actually trying to get away from a little bit now. I'm trying to use the word imagination, which may make it sound a little less real. But I know that there is a subset of people who have difficulty visualizing things in their mind's eye, and I don't believe that they have to be left out of this type of magic. Because yes, perhaps you don't see things clearly in your, like perhaps there's like an apple is the common thing that people use. If I ask you to picture an apple, what does it look like to you, right? Like, can you see it in full color in 3D? I can. I have like a strong, visualizing mind's eye. Some people can't. Some people like just kind of think of the idea of an apple, right? Or maybe see it in black and white or see it more vaguely, right, in their mind's eye. And even so, every person I know can enjoy being told a story and imagining the story, and they may enjoy it and imagine it in different ways, right? You might have someone reading a book to you, and you might not have it playing across your mind's eye like a movie theater, right? You might have that level of visualizations, but you can still understand the story, right? And use your imagination in whatever way works for you. So we can use our imagination for protective magic. And what I recommend doing is firstly getting yourself clear, doing a little bit of breathing, doing whatever calms your nervous system. I always start with a few deep breaths in through my nose and out through my mouth. By the way, if you're a bonus patron, you will be getting a guided meditation of this process that I'm describing now. But I'm describing this for everyone as something you can do on the go for yourself. Give yourself the opportunity to calm your nervous system. I do a few deep breaths in through my nose, out through my mouth. I do a body check-in. I might mindfully relax if like my neck is tense or what have you, to be in a relaxed state. Because when I'm in a relaxed state, I feel more in control than if I'm in a scared state. And then imagine that you are forming with your own power or with power from one of the elements, from a guide, from a guardian, whatever, a protective shield around yourself. And you can imagine this however it works for you, because different things make different people feel safe. The classic thing is like, it's a clear bubble. And I think the reason that's so classic is because at least in 2025, we all have experienced like the idea of like plexiglass, bulletproof glass that you can see through, but it's very difficult to break. Right. And so imagining a bubble like that, or plastic, I guess, imagining a bubble like that is not that far afield for us to imagine there is an invisible protection, but I can still see what I need to see and like operate in the real world with it. Right. I'm not walking around like with a shield made of black stone that nobody can get through, but I also can't check out at the supermarket that way, So we visualize an invisible boundary. The way I personally like to do this is a little different. I like to imagine breathing it out of me like I'm blowing up a balloon. And this is also how I like to cast a magic circle. And it doesn't have to be, if it feels like you don't have anything to give it, you could ask a helpful element, you could ask a helpful spirit, right? Like I will sometimes ask Earth to send me protective energy and use that, right? And I will visualize my in-breaths are gathering and focusing the energy, and my out-breath pushes the energy around me in a protective bubble. And here are the properties of the bubble that I repeat to myself as I do this. Information comes in, right? In other words, I can see and hear things, and I also allow for psychic information to come through. Information, not harmful intent, right? Information comes in. I can see and understand what's going on around me. I'm not blockaded in any way. Good energy can flow freely in both directions, right? If I want to give someone a hug on purpose, if someone is sending me good energy, if I'm feeling the sun's rays, on my face and receiving that good energy can flow through. Anything potentially harmful bounces right off and cannot make it through. Those are the properties. And I will literally visualize each thing as I say it. Or again, using my imagination, I will imagine each thing as I say it. I will imagine information coming into my circle and me being able to receive and interpret it. I will imagine good energy flowing in and me being able to receive it. And I will imagine anything negative bouncing off. And I usually take a little while to kind of firm up that bubble. I will do a few breaths. A lot of my work is breath focused because it's free. Breath is free. Breathing is a built-in ritual for everything you do. It's a built-in invocation. We breathe in, and like literally our body somehow knows how to get out of the thin air that I can't see and don't know anything about what's going on in there. My body knows how to pull the oxygen out of there and oxygenate my blood cells. Friggin' that's magic. And then breathing out, my magic ass body also knows how to put out what I no longer need, like the carbon dioxide. It's a releasing ritual. It's an invocation and a releasing ritual. So I like to tie my protection rituals to the breath. And I usually do start this with my version of a clearing or banishing ritual where I visualize the smart energy coming into my lungs, coming into my body, going into the nooks and crannies of my energy field of my body, and just like sending out on my out breath anything that's not helpful, anything that's not mine, any energy that either is like not my energy, maybe I picked it up, whatever, or maybe it is my energy, but I just don't need it anymore, stuff I'm holding on to unnecessarily, Or, you know, maybe I'm holding on to someone else's energy because I'm a people pleaser and I'm nervous about how an interaction, right? And I visualize the smart energy, finding all that extra not me energy and just sending it free. And then I visualize the bubble. And I imagine the bubble coming up around me so that I'm in here like that movie, like The Boy in the Bubble, right? I'm in here and the other stuff can't get to me. And I do this about once a day. And, you know, maybe I will firm it up a little extra. If I'm about to walk into something that stresses me out, maybe I'll take a few moments to do that. And I believe that it is benefiting me energetically as well as emotionally, because taking a few moments to do that, I can walk in with confidence and be like, well, I did something to protect myself. I did something to look out for myself. And it also naturally settles my nervous system because I'm incorporating breath into it. So I'm walking in a little, it also gives me some emotional protection. So that's Witch You Got This. Visualize a protective bubble around yourself. Visualize it however you want. I like the clear bubble thing. It helps me. You might choose to visualize like, you know, a medieval style shield, you know, armor copping up around you, right? You might visualize, I have at times visualized being in like a protective tower, you know, and being able to see over the top of the tower so I can still see what's going on, but nothing's getting through that stone tower, right? Imagine protective energy surrounding you. You can use this in tandem with asking for a spiritual ally, such as a guide or a guardian or a ancestor or god or goddess or what have you. You can do this in tandem with asking them. And I have done this, and I find that there are when I ask different allies, again, unverified personal gnosis, this is how it is for me. When I ask different guides to protect me, it feels and looks different in my mind's eye. And that feels meaningful and helpful to me, you know, so you can do both. You can also similarly do this with a friend. You can be like, let's put protective energy around each other. And I do think that sometimes that makes us feel better. Sometimes it makes us feel better to not be in charge of it. I did a protective ritual with a friend recently where I walked them through the guided meditation that my bonus patrons will be getting of creating that protective visualization. But I also had done a little bit of energy work on them before. And I didn't feel that it was anything that they couldn't have done themselves. But I do feel like sometimes having a helper, having someone who cares about you go like, I got you. Let me take care of this for you, right? It just makes you feel safer. And there's a flip side of that, where there are those of us who are like, I better do it myself or it's not going to be done right? I'm both in different situations, right? When it comes to protective magic, yes, I do want to visualize my own bubble and do it my way and the way that I think is right. And also when a friend lends me some protective energy, I feel like there's this extra power of their love for me in it. And that feels really safe to me in a way that I can't manufacture for myself, you know? So I really love this idea of exchanging protective magic with a friend, right? What if, like, you know, for those of you who live with another person, a partner, a family member, a roommate, whatever, if you're both into it, what if both of you imagined putting a protective circle around each other at the beginning of the day? I just think that's a really interesting idea in terms of magic. And I think it's a really interesting idea relationally too, of like what engaging in that type of ritual together might look like. I'm just curious and interested in it. I probably will not be doing that with my cat. I might put a protective circle around her. I do not want her putting a protective circle around me. We have different priorities. Anyway, thank you so much for tuning into SassafrasCast. If you enjoyed this broadcast, you can support the podcast by becoming a patron if you want to, at patreon.com/Sassafras Tarot. You can also find me and support me for free on social media by just following at Sassafras Tarot pretty much everywhere. Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, not Twitter, Threads, TikTok. I don't do Twitter anymore. I deleted my Twitter things, which is now X, and I just like, whatever. Nope. No, thank you. But all the other places. So I do Threads now instead of Twitter and Blue Sky, as Sassafras Tarot, TikTok, YouTube. You can find me anywhere, SassafrasTarot. If you would like to, you can always reach out to me on social media. Like, I respond to messages. If you message me, if you leave a comment, whatever, I will see it. I will respond to it. You can also email me if there's something you'd like to see in a future episode or something you want to ask me, sassafrastarot@gmail.com. And if you would like to be a deeper part of my community, I have a club that I have been growing for the last few months called the Monday Moon Magic and Meditation Club. It's become my favorite part of the week. And what it is every Monday at 11 a.m., I go live just for the club. It's on Facebook and YouTube, so you can choose your own adventure. I go live at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, and I do a little witchy weather report. I share what's going on with the astrological weather of the moment, what the moon is doing, and I offer some easy, emphasis on easy, ritual suggestions, what you might want to do for, the waning moon and this energy. And we also work with a new tarot card for every moon cycle, so we add that energy in as well. Right now in the group, we're working with the star, which is absolutely delicious. And we just do this weekly check-in together. And it's a way to kind of give yourself a psycho-spiritual grounding once a week. Have that experience of showing up for yourself in that way, and then go about your week. And we're also very supportive of each other. It's slumber party energy. It is girls in the bathroom at the bar at 11:30 at night energy. Everybody's kind to each other. Everybody's interested in each other. It's a really great vibe. So if you would like to join that, it's called the Monday Moon Magic and Meditation Club. It's at tinyurl.com/MondayMoon. It's $11.11 a month because I'm a nerd. I would love to have you in the club. Or if you want to ask me about it, message me anywhere at Sassafras Tarot. I think I've shared with you all the things I have to share with you. Wishing you safety and protection, and also emotional stability, because they go hand in hand in all of your journeys. If you're watching this live or close to live, the Witchy Weather Report is this Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. I will see you again soon. Bye, friends.